Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Great Awakening Generator. I'm your host, Rose McNair, and thank you for joining me. And of course, today I am joined by Lesley Diane. And Lesley Diane is, let me look for the page because let's just, as always, things happen. I'm trying to bring up my page so that I can say all the right words. Bear with me one second. Lesley Diane is a biodynamic craniosacral therapist. Wow. So Lesley, welcome, and how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. This is a bit of a thrill.
I'm glad, and it's really a pleasure to have you talking to me. I just thought that you had an amazing offering when you told me what you do, and you told me a little bit about it, and I thought, well, we need to talk about it on the YouTube channel. And we kind of met on a weird in a weird way, right? I was looking for olives in the community because I'm trying to preserve olives, and you had some, and this is how we started to talk. And I put it on the Telegram post, and or I posted on Telegram, the People's Health Alliance Telegram channel, and there we are. We're talking now. So really great to have you here. Now, Lesley, tell us a little bit about yourself before we go and talk about that amazing title you've got. Tell us a little bit about you.
My professional kind of history, I studied osteopathy in England, European School of Osteopathy, completed in 1995, and then I came home to New Zealand, and later, much later, studied Biodynamic Craniosacral Therapy, because in between those times, Biodynamic Craniosacral Therapy had become a study in its own right, as distinct from osteopathy, even though it took its roots from there. In between, I got 4 kids, and
wow.
I love yoga, and I attempt gardening, and that's really me in a nutshell at the moment.
And you know why I said wow when you said 4 kids? I would never have thought that. Just never thought.
They're big now.
They're grown up.
It was pretty intense at the yeah, they're in their 20s.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Well, I have one child, and I think anybody who has more than one child, you're amazing when you take on having more than one child. For me, this lifetime I had one child, and I thought, well, that was more than enough. Thank you very much. I'm okay with just having the one child. There was a time when I wanted another one, and then it's circumstances and that just didn't happen. It didn't happen like that. And in the years following, I've really been quite satisfied that the one child was what I was meant to have here. And I'm really happy with that. But when I hear people having 4 children and 2 children and all of that, I think, well, you guys are amazing. Because I think having a child is a big thing.
Yeah.
Responsibility.
Yeah. It's a big inspiration, a big source of inspiration.
Yes. Yes.
Having any kid.
Yeah. So yes, I see we might have a little person speaking in the background because I can hear something or a TV, but that's okay. We're just going to carry on. Don't worry about it. We're just going to carry on as long as we can hear each other and our audience that listen to this can hear what's coming through the channel. Right. So what we'll do is I'm going to get you to tell us now about this biodynamic craniosacral therapy. Big words. What does it all mean?
Biodynamic Craniosacral Therapy. It was originated by a fellow called William Garner Sutherland about 100 years ago. He was studying osteopathy, and he noticed that the bones of the skull, which, like everybody else had been taught, became fused after we're born. They're not fused so that we can kind of squeeze through the birth canal, and like everyone else, he'd been taught that they fuse as we grow. And so he noticed that actually the skull that he was holding while he was studying osteopathy was difficult to hold together in his hands, and he noticed it's not fused, and he looked closely and noticed that the bevels on the sutures between the bones of the skull, famously he said they looked like the gills of a fish, and as if they were designed to accommodate movement. And so William Garner Sutherland dedicated the rest of his illustrious career, he was brilliant and dedicated, to the discovery, the journey of what is this movement? Why are the bones, what is moving? Why are the bones apparently designed to accommodate movement? And he talked a lot about the potency in the fluids of the body and how that will move. That's what potency will do. So in those 100 years, craniosacral biodynamics has probably come a ways, but then again, maybe it's come full circle back where it started from. It's anyway, where it is at now is, or at least the way I understood from training, Body Intelligence Training School. It's an international thing, Body Intelligence Training, that teaches Biodynamic Craniosacral Therapy, and they've kind of, I think, come back to the origins of what Biodynamic Craniosacral Therapy was about. That working with that potency and the fluids of the body. Okay. And we've come to work with three craniosacral rhythms. And yeah, shall I go on? Shall I carry on?
Before you go on to give us the details of this, right? So I guess for me, what I am trying to, in my head, I'm trying to put it together, what it means. And I feel like, okay, so we've got a little bit of the history of where it's come through, and you talking about it coming back back into being, so to speak, not being, but perhaps back into the awareness of people.
The original concept.
Yes, the original concept. So you also mentioned osteopathy, and you're talking about having that kind of qualification. So you studied that, you obviously practiced that. So did you practice this osteopathy first as a osteopath, and then move into biodynamic craniosacral therapy? I'm getting it. Can you tell? It's coming through. So it's almost like so what I hear is that you study osteopathy, and then this came up later on. So it's a building on that knowledge of osteopathy. Do you think you needed?
Yes, I would say so.
You needed this first or osteopathy first?
I think I needed this first, or osteopathy first. I'm glad that I did it the way I did it.
Okay.
To get a sense of anatomy and mechanics of the system, and then to kind of come to that question of what makes it alive. Where does soul, consciousness, spirit, and consciousness come into this mechanical machine thingy? So it was osteopathy was started by a fellow called Andrew Taylor Still, and he was a physician and a surgeon in the 1800s, and he was frustrated with medicine as it was in the 1800s. And so he wanted, Andrew Taylor Still, the founder of osteopathy, he wanted to come back to a fundamental principle that the body heals itself, that if we treat the disease, the symptom, without considering the living person that has the symptom, it becomes all a bit mechanistic, and the treatments can do as much harm as good. But if we work with the body's own inherent tendency towards health, then we're less likely to further traumatize that system, and more likely to empower them in their own journey towards health.
I really love that. Yeah, I love that concept. I think it's right. We're all individuals, and we don't all fit one size, so to speak of. And so therefore, when health is being administered to us, we have to look at the individual, and then the body, the person, the lifestyle, all those things, right? I like that concept. So I know that we weren't going to talk about osteopathy, but tell me about it. Just get in a couple of sentences. What is it?
It's based on 3 principles.
Yes.
Body heals itself being the principle, the main one. Well, my favorite perhaps. The other 2 being structure governs function, and the rule of the artery is supreme. So where there is healthy blood flow, there will be healthy tissues, basically. Okay. So his osteopathy is kind of getting the mechanics of the body working freely, so that the blood flows freely, so that health will ensue.
Okay. And so therefore you get, when you go to the osteopath, he might give you some physical exercises to do, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Physical articulation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So biodynamic craniosacral therapy is you've learned later on, and you said something about my interpretation is, I'm hearing there is a bit of going into the soul of, is it because you're attracted to it because the soul gives life to the bones, so to speak, of this being? Is that, maybe that's not the right question, I don't know, but yeah. So you were saying something, and I can't remember all the words when you talked about biodynamic sacral therapy, craniosacral therapy.
I think I made a distinction between
Yes.
what has been part of osteopathy,
Yeah.
a biomechanical model of craniosacral work, and so working with where there's a restriction between the cranial bones, perhaps,
Yes.
or working where there's a restriction of the sacrum relative to the hip bones, for instance.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then holding or working with the intention of alleviating that restriction and allowing the craniosacral fluid, the cerebrospinal fluid and the fluids of the body in general to move more freely that way.
Okay.
The biodynamic approach kind of comes at it the other way around a little bit, in terms of the restrictions between the bones are as much a result of a lack of potency in the fluids as the other way around.
Okay.
And and that the body has that inherent wisdom that those restrictions will be there for a reason, and that reason will often be emotional, spiritual, mental, as much as it is a mechanical event.
Okay, so you were about to tell us about the 3 rhythms, and I said we'll come back to it. So please tell us, because I really like what I read in the bio that you sent me.
Basically 3 rhythms.
This is this is what you will, for a benefit of our audience, we're talking about the biodynamic craniosacral therapy, 3 rhythms of that. Yeah.
I find it helpful to kind of find our way into the concept by considering that our physical body breathes, our lungs breathe air in and out, and from there it's not such a stretch to consider that what in yoga they call the etheric body and the astral body and the long tide and the causal body, they also breathe. That if they're living, then they'll be breathing. And so I find that, for myself anyway, a useful way of getting my head into the idea. And then once I'm there, the craniosacral rhythm. So this has been taught since William Garner Southern. The cranial rhythmic impulse. The cranial rhythmic impulse it's roughly 12 seconds a cycle, and that's about 5 cycles per minute. So it's quite slow. It's slower than the physical breath generally. And my experience of it has been that when our mind is busy, that cranial rhythmic impulse will be busy. It will be loud, so to speak. That cranial rhythmic impulse will be, and an example of that experience, if your landlord tells you you've got 3 weeks to find yourself somewhere else to live because they're selling your home, and so you're in a little bit of a, oh my God, I need a miracle, and your mind is busy. Oh my God, what do I do? Where do I go? And it's got a survival aspect to it. It's the nuts and bolts of your day-to-day life. And your mind, and you're busy. And in that state, your cranial rhythmic impulse can feel very loud, so to speak. And it can feel like a therapeutic event when that cranial rhythmic impulse kind of goes into still point, and often it'll go into what we call freeze. It's a still point, but it's not a place of health exactly. It's like a deer in the headlights. It's that freeze kind of feeling, and then that cranial rhythmic impulse will sometimes in a case like that, kind of search a little bit, kind of search, looking for, it's orienting to where do I find resource? Where do I find a way through this situation? Where do I find wisdom in myself? And then it will seem to drop, and it'll seem to drop and go quite still. And this is a different kind of stillness. This is a place of infinite possibilities kind of stillness, and it'll seem to drop and then come back into a rhythm that has accessed the next rhythm, the mid-tide. So this is the second one I'm talking about now, the mid-tide. And mid-tide is less so than cranial rhythmic impulse, which is associated with the tissues, cells, function, structure. Mid-tide is more about the fluids, and it's more whole body. So cranial rhythmic impulse can be compartmentalized. We can have our heart doing one thing and our stomach doing another thing, which isn't ideal. It's it can feel, we will feel kind of disjointed when it's like that. And so when we have the opportunity in a craniosacral session to drop that into mid-tide, it's much more whole body. It's the fluids, and those fluids, they've got a continuous knowing, a continuous throughout the body of so when we drop into that mid-tide place, it's resourcing, it's empowering, and it's integrating. It's as if a perfect fifth drops into its fundamental note of mid-tide. Mid-tide, I associate it with our genetic heritage, with patterns that we've carried through from the amniotic fluid that we were in before we were born. We've carried it through from how our mother was feeling when she was pregnant with us. We've carried it through from lineage, maybe several generations back, those patterns that are subconscious for us because they're all we've ever known. So it's resourcing for cranial rhythmic impulse to drop into mid-tide, that whole body fluid space, that aliveness in the fluid, that potency in the fluid that William Garner Sutherland talked about. And that, again, that too can have issues. That, you know, that those there can be hang-ups in the passions that we've carried through for generations. You know, there can be patterns that we don't know that they're there. We just feel like we're somehow there's more to our potential than we're quite able to access. That can be a feeling that we can have a sense of in that mid-tide space, and that's when it's useful to orient that to what we call long tide. Long tide is, I think, it's the breathing of the light body, the breathing of the spirit. It is said in craniosacral texts that long tide goes with us from one lifetime to another, like it's the breath of the spirit, like it's the breath of the light body that chose this incarnation in the first place, and that is a whole thing with a destiny. And yeah, long tide is 100 seconds per cycle, which is really, it's kind of too slow to feel it as movement per se. It'll feel like a welling of light, and then a dropping into a deep place, and a welling of light, and then a dropping into a deep place. And yeah, so when cranial rhythmic impulse has the opportunity to drop into mid-tide, then that's resourceful for it. It's sort of because it's got a whole body awareness. And then when that mid-tide has the opportunity to access long tide, it's the breath of the light body. And you know, that light body, it does feel like holding light, and light is a quantum phenomenon, and accessing that is that potential to make a quantum shift, and thereby to liberate held health, as we call it, liberate things that have been holding us back. Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah.
I love that explanation. I love long tide. I'm happy about long tide. I love it. So do you think
all got their place?
They all have their place. So I guess
rhythmic impulse is useful for when we need to think about our plans for the day. You know, how are we going to put food on the table? Those are cranial rhythmic impulse kind of thought processes. And mid-tide has its place of I love my kids. How do I want to set a role model? How do I want to contribute to their world? Those are mid-tide thoughts, and they've got their place.
Mm-hmm. So the cranial rhythmic impulse of 12 seconds, that's the first one, right?
Yeah.
That's like a fight or flight mode that we go into when we get, for example,
Not
the
in and of
landlord.
itself.
Sorry?
Not in and of itself. When it stops, it goes in. It's cranial rhythmic impulse is very changeable. It's
Okay.
very responsive to our circumstances,
Yeah.
and it can go into freeze.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can go into freeze, is what you said.
Yeah.
Okay, but we can correct ourselves if you're conscious that it's happening.
Yes.
And then you can start doing your breathing, like your long tide breathing, to bring yourself back into balance, right? Am I on the right track of that? So I like that you said all of it is valid, because quite often when we do this, when you think about when you constantly, if you're getting a bad news, for example, then you go into fight or flight mode and you start to hold your breath, and then you're not breathing properly, and then as a result you sort of stay in that process, and then your brain we don't seem to be breathing properly so that the brain can activate the creative side of us, right? And so, because when we do the deep breaths, when we do the long deep breaths, what actually happens is we're sending oxygen to the brain, we sort of releasing ourselves from that, then we're able to think better, feel better, be in a more relaxed mode, right? So do you think that we obviously experience these three rhythms of breathing at any time in the day, depending on what's happening in our world, right? And we can experience that more than once in one day. That my understanding is right?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Good.
My example to answer that question the other day, I was actually thinking about writing the spiel for this.
Yes.
And I was thinking, I'm too busy to drop into my mid-tide. I'm far too busy for that. Which struck me as kind of ironic. It's sometimes we can feel like we're too busy, staying on time and doing everything we need to do. And there's a certain irony to that, because then we become a little bit separated from why we would do it, from from its own sense of purpose. Yeah.
It almost seems, well, and I say this really ignorant of all of this, because you've done a lot of study for this to be talking about it, and my limited knowledge, but I almost feel like your mid-tide is about how you serve others, how you feel. Your breath is about how you serve others, and your long tide is about how you serve you, right? And the fight and flight mode, the first one, I don't know. It's about like, I'm just here in limbo, and how am I going to respond to that? And sometimes, because of our experience, because of our background, because of what we hear, we have the natural, not sometimes, I guess all the time, we have the natural compulsion when somebody gives us news that is not stabilizing, that is looks and feels like a little bit of being unsettled, or that your life's going to change suddenly. We go back to the memory of what that means to us, how we've been programmed to respond to that, and what that means. Because I mean, if you think about it, if a person's landlord gave them notice for 3 weeks, and saying 3 weeks notice, we're selling the house, you would think, okay, how am I going to respond to that? Initially be like, oh my gosh, what the heck, I wasn't planning for this, right? But had we been more prepared that this kind of life is changing all the time, this kind of thing can happen, the response is more important. Yeah, you're going to make all the changes. You know that you'll find a house, you will do all the logical, practical things. You will get back into your mind space to readjust your thinking about, I'm not going to be here in 4 weeks' time because I will have moved or whatever, right? But you automatically go into the active motion, and that is your 12-second impulse. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you know what I'm saying. That's the first rhythm. But I guess if we were taught to respond differently to that kind of news or something like that, if it was programmed within us, then we won't go to that. We won't
Yeah.
have fight or flight mode to that thing, you know. Maybe we'll have fight or flight mode to something
Yes,
else.
I agree. Yes,
Okay.
I agree. Craniorhythmic impulse, when it's kind of healthy and it's integrated throughout the body, is where we would do mathematics and where we would think about, okay, so I need to go and see a real estate agent, and it's
Yeah.
so when it's working well and in the whole body as an integrated whole, it's where we do that kind of necessary thinking. But when it
Yes.
goes into panic, it gets isolated from mid-tide, and then we just run around like a chicken with its head chopped off, and we're in a panic. And so to reorient it back into that mid-tide, so that then we're better able to actually think.
Yes. Yes. So I'm going to ask the questions are slightly off the line of questioning we decided to talk about, but I mean, it's really interesting what you said now. And I like that you simplified something that sounded complicated in the title, but you simplified it. So I want to ask, okay, let me ask the question I had on my piece of paper, and then I'm going to follow on with another one after you answer this. So why do we need this kind of therapy?
Why do we need this kind of therapy?
Why? Big question. And I guess think about when you answer it. Okay, no, answer it. I better not interfere with what your thought pattern. Sorry.
I've got a couple of little examples that come to mind about that.
Absolutely.
One is,
yeah, good.
One is just an example of somebody who, as a child, was consistently discouraged when expressing her emotions, and how that felt in a particular session was as if her vagus nerve, whose job it would, or part of the job of the vagus nerve would be to connect your emotions in your brain, to relay messages from your heart back to your head and vice versa, and to navigate how you interact socially. And it's as if hers, I'm speculating, because of that experience growing up, was kind of running in reverse. It was shutting everything down so that her head could operate without the interference from her heart. But that works, but only to a point.
Yes.
And that so craniosacral work is beneficial in such an instance, so that you can get that vagus nerve communication between your emotional center and your mental, your intuitive center, your responding center, working the way it's designed to, rather than being shut. Another example that comes to mind, and this one's less kind of personal, more kind of general, and might run into something that you were going to ask later. I'm not quite sure, but
that's okay.
Lately, everybody's got a restriction through upper heart chakra where the thymus is. It seems to be universal almost. Everyone's got this. We've all seemed to got a restriction at the top of the thoracic spine, between the top of the shoulder blades, and through the collarbones, and through the thoracic inlet, and roughly where the thymus is. And so whatever decisions that we might have made over the last 3 years, we seem to have this in common, that it's as if our system has been hacked, as if we are needing to make a conscious effort to tune ourselves to our divine blueprint, which is what is going on at that thymus. It's how it does its job is by holding a knowing of our divine blueprint, of what we're made of, what's our code.
Personal code,
so,
not anybody else's. Yes.
Yeah, unadulterated, true to source.
Yes, true to source,
You know,
sovereignty, authenticity of the self, nothing
yeah,
other than anything else. Yes. So you find people are having this problem lately.
lately I mean, it's an area that's mechanically gonna, it's likely to have, because it's where we have our sense of self-belief to some extent. So
Right.
it's not, it could be coincidental, shall we say? But lately,
Right.
I feel like it's accentuated this commonality of everybody having this tension.
Yeah.
Like we're making a conscious effort to restore or to uphold that
Yes.
truth of who we are.
That's right. And I'm not in disagreement with that. I really agree with you there. There's so much going on at the moment. And I feel like I was listening to somebody the other day I was listening to Gregg Braden actually the other day, and he talked about like we seem to be in this fight for personal sovereignty because there is people are trying to get our bodies now. They're trying to, they're trying to hack the body. They're trying to take that from us. And so we are
There's
in
a
the
battle for our divinity.
There's a battle for our divinity. There's a battle, I always say our sovereignty. But I mean sovereignty,
Yes.
our personal sovereignty, because sovereignty can have anything to do with nations. And of course, and so we're in this battle because it is a battle. And so I understand, might explain why I've always got problems with the neck at night. I get up in the morning and back of the neck's really sore. I've moved the pillows, I've moved the bed, I've done all of these things, but I'm still going through that. And I keep asking my guidance system about what that's all about. And it's interesting you said what you said. Anyway, something for me to think about. So, Lesley, I really love how you explain this. And it's so in tune with whatever I'm thinking at the moment. And we there's so much more we could talk about, especially you talked about the thymus gland and everything. So is the thymus gland the seat of the soul? Is it connected to the
It is said to be the physical work organ of the soul seat. Yeah.
Okay, great. I've heard that before. Which chakra is it that we would work with? Is it the causal chakra or the 12th chakra?
Upper heart. So
Upper heart.
that's just where it is.
Okay.
Upper heart chakra.
Yeah, upper heart. That's right. Upper heart chakra. That's right. Okay. Right. Just by the way, we were just talking about something by the way, but it's really good. I feel it's very important. The thymus gland is very important. That upper heart chakra is in balance. Very important for it to balance. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to think about, making sure that this upper heart chakra is balanced. Look for meditations that clear and balance out the thymus gland. Yeah.
Yep. Gregg Braden said. He said something else that I've hung on to quite a bit. He said in 3 different ancient languages: Aramaic, Hebrew, and Sanskrit.
I just heard it the other day. Yes. Go on, tell us that.
Yeah.
But
I'm
tell us what he said.
paraphrasing what I remember of
Absolutely.
that Gregg Braden said, which was that in those 3 different languages, the codon for the start of a sentence, so to speak, when reading DNA, when reading RNA, when the ribosomes in the cell cytoplasm are reading RNA, and there's a start codon, and it's made up of sequences of carbon and hydrogen and nitrogen and oxygen. And he, in his expertise, ascertained that they correspond, the numbers on the periodic table in chemistry correspond to the letters in these 3 different ancient languages. And in all 3 languages separately, they spell out God eternal in the body. So the start of a production of a protein in the cell cytoplasm starts with God eternal in the body. And I think that's something that is helpful to me to kind of remember lately is that there's an unscathableness about that.
Yes. Yes. Wow. I like that. I also thought I heard him say, and maybe I'm paraphrasing again, when he talked about that and he talked about the languages, he also said that every one of us have a unique code in our DNA. So we all have this unique code. He's written a book that helps you find yours. And and this is what right now, that is what the fight is about. It's about getting our DNA, because we are all unique beings and we have a unique code. You know, like so it's really interesting. And I find this quite fascinating, because I was going to have a chat. I was trying to have a video where I do a natter with somebody, and I wanted to bring in the teachings that I've been listening to on the weekend by Gregg Braden. And because he just put out something last week, or it was put out last week, where it was 19.5 minutes long or something, and he really gave a good message for this current time and how to maintain yourself and how to stay out of the noise, and just remember that it's for us to remember that the noise is trying to distract us from our purpose, and you know, to go within and work on that part of it yourself, rather than getting caught up in the noise around us. And you know, that's what we're going to talk about. And then what is that series called? Science, Politics, and Something. He did that a couple of years ago. And I'm just going to look for it here on the phone, because I'd like to just say it, because I think it was such a fascinating thing to do with Gregg Braden, to watch. I tried watching it a couple of years ago when it came out, and I kind of lost. I thought it got too technical for me, and I stopped watching it. So, this is it: Science, Policy, and Politics. I think it's got 2 or 3 episodes of it. He's done that. It's really an interesting watch. They're not very long, but they are just really good to watch, especially for this time and space that we're going through what we're going through. And he really is quite, he tells it like it is. It's interesting how you can tell somebody how something is, but it doesn't have to be threatening to the other person. They don't have to feel like you're trying to influence my thinking. If you do it on the platform of love, the message can come out nice and easy, right? And that's what he does in this Science, Policy, and Politics. So for our listeners, we just told you something else we weren't planning to tell you, but it just happened and it aligned. And that I am so grateful. The universe works in mysterious ways. You know, I love it. Absolutely beautiful. So I was asking, why do you need this kind of therapy? And you explained, and you gave us some examples. And I do like examples. Sorry, you gave me those examples.
I have another example.
By all means, please share it.
It's just in general terms, so not a specific experience, but actually this one, it's inspired by something that Dr. Zach Bush said, and thank goodness for that, because it's applicable and it's palpable and workable. He was talking about cancer briefly in amongst the spiel about other things, and he said that there's one reason for cancer, and that reason is isolation. And he was meaning that, as far as I understand it, on a kind of a sociological level. So when we feel isolated, when we've been separated from our kids, or somehow separated from our community, it applies on a physiological level that when someone has cancer, that part will feel what we call dissociated. It'll feel like it's not there. So, and to kind of hold space for it, and so that the body kind of welcomes it back into being present as part of the body. I think, you know, it can work on a physiological level of welcoming that part of the body which has become isolated, feels dissociated, back into the whole.
Yes, so you can reconnect it.
Yeah. And then in a fractal universe that we're in, if that's happening on a physiological level, it's likely to also flow into a sociological level, so that we won't feel so isolated in our life either.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very interesting point you make there about isolation. Let's not forget the big word isolation that we've had now in this last 3 years. Now I want to ask this. So biodynamic craniosacral, did I say it right? Sacral therapy. How is it done?
Mm-hmm.
How is it done? What do you physically do with this, or verbally do with it?
It's become quite a simple sort of protocol. Someone will come in to a room that's got a massage table and a desk and a couple of chairs. We'll have a sit down, we'll have a bit of a talk about what's brought the person, you know, what's motivated them to take their time to come to this biodynamic craniosacral therapy session.
Yes.
Yeah, an opportunity for them to, you know, tell their story as much or as little as they'd like. And then I generally invite people to stand up and put my hands on their shoulders and just get a sense of how they stand, you know. It's optional, not everybody, you know. And then I'll pretty much always invite people to lie on the table and get comfy with a blanket on top and just relax. And then I generally start at the feet and I put my hands on people's feet often to begin with. It's a good grounding place to start, and as such it's a good place to let their system come into being present where they are, because often we're not, you know, we're in a strange place we've never been before, we don't know what's going to happen, and so to take a moment to kind of breathe, for them to kind of breathe and become completely present on the table, yeah, as much as their physiology can at that moment. And then I'll kind of contact other parts of their body, you know, often liver, often the base of the spine, because it's called craniosacral because the sacrum is an important part of that system. What's happening with the sacrum between the hip bones can often be a reflection or be reflected by what's going on in the sphenoid and the temporal bones in the neck. Yeah, so, and my happy place is working with that point at the top of between the top of the shoulder blades. I usually finish or nearly finish by coming to someone's head and neck, and just work wherever their system directs.
Okay.
Putting my hands on, and when I'm there, what am I doing? I'm sitting there with my hands on a person's head or neck or shoulders, and I'm getting myself out of the way as much as I can, really, so that their system has the opportunity for its parts to talk to each other, for it to drop into a safe place.
Yes.
And
yes.
there's sometimes the stories that have been subconscious or unconscious can have a chance to kind of present themselves. And once they become part of the consciousness in the room because they're felt and heard and listened to, then once they've told their story, it's as if they don't need to stay in the tissues. You know, we can kind of go, oh, that's there, and then breathe. It's not that we develop amnesia and forget that something ever happened to us. It's just that we don't need to hold the tension that came with that memory. We can.
It's in the past now. It's not actually happening right now. It's happened. Let's acknowledge, leave, and move. And live in the moment right now. So does a person, so to come to this kind of therapy, do people have to feel pain? Do they feel the people, your patients, do they feel pain? Do they feel the emotional stuff, or they feel like they're not moving forward in their lives, and for example, my career is not going right, or whatever? Is kind of the problems that people would be experiencing, or the issues they might have, to think they would need this kind of therapy?
One thought that I have about that, a couple of thoughts which might seem a little contradictory, but oftentimes when we feel restricted in our lives, we also feel a bit stiff in the hips, or
Yes.
we've got a bit of a headache or something. That they do tend to go together.
Yes.
Saying
yes.
that it's there's no requirement to have physical pain in order to find benefit from coming to a craniosacral session.
Yes. Yeah.
Those feelings of I don't know how to relax, or I feel like I'm going around in circles and experiencing the same drama over and over again, or those are relevant in a craniosacral session also.
Okay. All right. So it doesn't have to be painful, but it could be something emotional, or just thinking you need to, need some headway. So it's basically, if I think about it, it's attending to the physical, but also the emotional and the mental space, right? So
incidentally, what Andrew, sorry,
go on. Go on. No,
what Andrew Taylor Still, who was the founder of osteopathy back in the 1800s, his dream was for medicine to be oriented to supporting health, as much as to treating symptoms. And so if people come when they're feeling emotionally uptight, or if before they're in physical pain, that's even better, isn't it?
It is even better, because it means like you're not trying to work to becoming pain-free and then working on the cause of the pain, really, isn't it? So it's almost like saying, I've been hearing more and more that the body holds the memories of the experiences of the past. And so we are all having sometimes sickness, or maybe even the present. Sometimes sickness is what manifests due to the fact that the body has had blockages and things like that because of the memories of that experience. So the body is a very living thing, for want of a better word, and it has a mind of its own, so to speak of, because it does talk in various ways. Because when it's feeling blocked or anything like that, then it manifests that feeling in terms of sickness or pain, or I don't know, emotional information, stuff like that, right? So how long, if somebody came to you for some, and I know this is a very generic question, and we're all individuals, as we were talking and promoting that idea, because that is actually true. Not one size fits all. How long would somebody need for this kind of therapy to work, to start to feel better? Yes, I stumped you that question, because I don't think it's a one size fits all question, isn't it? It depends on the individual and their circumstances, right?
I mean, there's a bit of a rule of thumb that if a condition is chronic, then it might take longer to kind of peel off the layers, so to speak. But that's not an absolute. And I think generally I would say that, one session is better than not, and one session, I think it's ambitious of me to think that I could learn everything, sort of get to the nitty gritty, or to know someone, to resolve everything in one session. I think that would be ambitious of me to think that I could resolve everything in one session. I like to do 3 or 4, but
that's logical.
There's all sorts. There's people who come once and then they're leaving the country, and there's people who come monthly for years, and there's people that do like a course of 3 or 4 sessions, and I wouldn't make a rule about one's right, one's wrong.
Okay, I like that. I mean, it makes sense to me. It's logical. Normally the first session is a lot about getting to know the person and where they're at, and whatever else they want to tell you about themselves that will help the future sessions, or to help an actual session, right? Whether you're doing the physical work. So I do something called Thai yoga massage, and sometimes the lady who does it for me does a thing called orthobionomy. And I don't know if you've heard of orthobionomy, but the only way I can describe it is it's where certain points in the body are touched, like you touch certain pressure points, and that basically gets the body to right itself. Like if there was an issue with the jaw, for example. And I find that quite fascinating because I've had some real progress with that. So is biodynamics craniosacral therapy a little bit like that?
I can't speak about orthobionomy.
No, it's okay. I
I
mean, is it something? Because
mm,
what you're saying made me think that you do work with the people who come to
yes,
you, and you sort of, your hand is over them, and you sort of feeling for energy,
yes,
aren't you? And
yes,
so you are not touching
yes.
the body, but you're touching you're like above the body. Your hands probably going above the body. Is that right?
Occasionally, usually
Okay.
I'm actually in contact,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I think I can relate to what you're saying in as much as we might contact with one hand L3, the middle of the lumbar spine, and with the other hand the back of the knee,
Yes.
and get those 2 points. Get those 2 points. Facilitate an opportunity for those two parts of their body to kind of talk to each other, because there's a circuit now. So in that sense, yes. Uh, a couple of things come to mind, which I'm not sure if they pertain to orthobionomy or not, but a couple of things come to mind. One being that, for instance, problems with the neck. Sometimes there's a pattern of tension which doesn't feel like it's from a whiplash injury
Yes.
or something. It's just tension,
Yeah.
and sometimes that can be related to the temporal bones and the sphenoid bone, and
Yeah.
their mirroring of the sacrum and the pelvic bones,
Yes.
and even the reproductive tract can kind of be reflected in the neck, which is useful because it's the
Yes.
neck is yeah. So I don't know if that relates to your question, but
No, I don't know either, but I think I don't know the details of what actually happens, and this is why I'm saying no, I can't answer that. I can't say that yes, it does, but when you were talking about your process, I was just feeling like it's almost like the body writes itself, because it finds, when you touch certain points of the body, it gets the signal that something's off, and it starts to write to put itself back to normal. And that's the only reason why it just popped into my head and I asked. But I think that you've done a great job of explaining this. And one last question, or a couple of last questions before we say, we say goodbye to audience. Does this require the work you do? Is there anything esoteric going on in it?
is there anything esoteric going on with it?
Yes.
Well, it's been a spiritual journey for me, and and an example of that is when I'm working, I'm sometimes asking myself that phrase from Gregg Braden, God eternal in the body. So what's the sort of what's God's intention, and that intention is in the body. That intention is not just out there. It's also it's
Yes.
right underneath my hands. What's God's intention for this body, or this being, this person? And so what's their intention? What is it? What are they? Where are they trying to get to? What are they trying to liberate? What are they? What's their journey? And so it often feels like backing off with my hands a little bit. So it's not that I let
Okay.
go. It's just that I expand a sense of space. So that we're just holding a listening space, and yeah, so that that's how I experienced the spiritual journey of mine of practicing this therapy and it took a bit of getting used to the idea, because with osteopathy training, there's the idea of making a mechanical adjustment, and biodynamics is a little bit different. It's entirely respecting the intelligence in their body and listening to where its restrictions are and where its health is and where its wisdom is, and letting those two talk to each other in a conversation between my hands. But it's their conversation, it's their intelligence, it's their body wisdom, their self-empowerment that's doing the healing work. And so is there anything esoteric? I would say yes, from my own experience of it. It's about letting go of me wanting to do something or fix something, and learning to totally let them be in, let their system be the empowering force that's going on there. Another perhaps secondary answer is that our physical body, according to Esoteric Anatomy by Bruce Burgess, and I do feel it to be so, that our physical body, our astrological archetypes, our signs of our astrology, has an anatomical location. That's so as our astrological blueprint, we'll have a map in our anatomy, and so there's an esotericness going on about that.
It's like those codes. It's like the codes that well, you know what I mean, like that Gregg was talking about. It's like those codes we have within us. I'm almost seeing map. I'm almost seeing a map again. And when you say that, when you say map, I'm like, wow, awesome. Right. I believe the body does have the answers to ourselves. We have everything within us that we need here in this space and time, and things that we have issues with, we have the answers to them. And
that's the fundamental core of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. I really like talking to people like yourself, because I feel like there's so many varieties of finding this one thing, and that is we have the answers within ourselves. A lot of times and throughout the generations and centuries, we have thought that everything is outside of us, yet everything is within us. We have come to this realization. Well, a lot of us have, and others are awakening to it. So so good to talk to you. Is there anything else you want to tell us that I have not asked you?
I'll just mention that on Mondays I'm working in Onehunga.
Yes.
It's relatively recent. Shiloh Holistic Health Wellness Center is getting itself established in Onehunga.
Yes.
And other days of the week I'm working from home in Waitaki Bay. Anything else I'd like to mention? Not that I can think of right now. Just that I'm very thankful for you taking the time to talk to me.
I am so pleased that I talked to you. I thought this was a very interesting conversation. I said that we talk about 45 minutes. You know that we've gone beyond the 45 minutes, right? I just wanted to share that with you because you were like, really?
I was like, whoa, 45 minutes.
So for the benefit of our audience, Lesley can be contacted at Shiloh. Say that again, Shiloh Community Center?
Holistic Wellness Center.
Sorry, Shiloh Holistic Wellness Center. Okay, and that's in Onehunga in Auckland.
Yeah.
But also, Lesley operates from home. And that means you have an office at home, and people can make appointments with you and come through and have your sessions with you there, right? So Lesley has got a home office. Now, Lesley, how do people, so how do they get in touch with you? Because I know you said you don't have a website, but how do people know about it?
It's best just to text. It's best
Text.
just to text me.
All right. Now, what I'm going to do
Yeah.
is I'm going to refer the Shiloh Holistic Wellness Center telephone number or website, web address, because you're on there, aren't you?
I am. Yes.
Yes. And I'd rather do it that way, and then people can get in touch with you via that medium.
Yes.
Because I feel
That'd
like
be great.
if we
That'd
put
be my business too.
your telephone, your mobile number everywhere, you just got anything can happen. And I just really feel that we need to put a web address there. And so this is where you can be contacted. So this is where Lesley will be you'll be able to get in touch with Lesley. I will put the link in the description box. I will also put, because we mentioned Gregg Braden and we mentioned those series and the one that he's just done recently, we will put links. I'll put links into those ones, because I feel like right now it is a time for us there's a lot of reports going on in the world, right? And I always ask myself, so whose report are you going to believe, right? And for me, the answer always is, I believe my report, the report within me, what my guidance system says to me, what my intuition is giving me is the report I believe, right? So, we are referring to Gregg Braden, but when you listen to it, what is your intuition telling you about what he's saying? If it resonates, if it is in agreement with it, that's all that is important. So, we're not trying to put in their stuff there so that you are influenced, but I thought that was a very beautiful message for how we navigate current energies, current times, current events, whether we should be navigating events that we have nothing to do with. Yes, we're all affected, but what is your business right now? Your business is to be looking after you, taking care of your health, mentally, physically, spiritually, all of that, emotionally, all that, taking care of you and yours. And then when you do that, when your light is shining, then it extends to the collective, to everything beyond you. Because all of us collectively doing that will ensure the transformation process for the planet and for the people will go through, and it will go through rather smoothly. Well, as smooth as it's possible, because many things that are not smooth, that are disruptive, need to happen to break down all the old systems. And we need to be able to stay in a smooth space. So that's the best way I can describe that. So thank you again.
Yep.
So, go on, Lesley. I was going to ask, is there anything you wanted to say to
that? Something I came across recently that felt useful was that love has a signature vibration frequency, and it corresponds to the wavelengths of the helical shape of DNA and RNA. It's a waveform in physicality, and it's a frequency or a wavelength that matches that of love. And so that I find that an empowering thought, in as much as we can consciously find that feeling, that feeling of bliss or love.
Yes.
And for kids, for cats, for life, and therefore, sorry.
That's okay. Keep going. Keep going. That was a message that you were telling us. High vibration. High vibration.
Yes. Yeah. It's by resonating with that. We are therefore able to use properly our own DNA code, our own RNA. Yeah, because that's what it's designed to express. That's what.
Yeah. Anyway, love is very empowering. It's a good feeling. It's a beautiful feeling. It's beautiful to show it to others. And on that note of showing love, thank you so much, Lesley, for showing your love to us by giving us your time and sharing what you do. We are always appreciative of that. And yes, and thank you for coming on board and having a chat with me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for
you're very welcome. You're very
guidance,
welcome.
time, presence, hospitality.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. All right, everyone, time for us to love and leave you. We'll catch you next time here on the Great Awakening Generator. I'm your host, Rose McNair. Until next time, keep reaching for the stars. Goodbye.